33 years. Muslim, Jewish, and Christian beliefs all come together at this time to celebrate the same thing: Easter, Passover, and the Ramadan Kareem. Every 33 years, this happens so that the inclusivity and the oneness of all that is really becomes very evident. So happy Easter, happy Ramadan, happy Passover, happy Ostara, and we'll talk about that. Today is the day the Lord has made, and it is good. And today we attend to the message of Easter to help ourselves rise up from the grave of old beliefs that limit us and the tomb of old regrets into a new life of body, mind, and spirit. Now, if that's true, then what do bunny rabbits and eggs have to do with all of this? I'm glad you asked. By this time, I feel sure that everyone here, and those of you watching from home, know that the celebration of Easter, or Ostara, or Ostra, is much, much, much older than any Christian tradition. It's much older than the story of Jesus' death and resurrection on the third day. In fact, as I have talked about here before, in previous Easters, Jesus of Nazareth was a relative latecomer to the pantheon of gods and goddesses who did the dying resurrection thing. It's an ancient universal archetype. And the earliest account of a goddess who died and rose again was written about 2,000 years before Jesus was born. So you see that this archetype, this idea of death resurrection, is deeply primal. Ostara, as it was originally called, was a pagan solar celebration honoring spring, the spring's warmth, the light from the sun, the awakening of the earth. And here's the kicker. The symbols of the goddess Ostara are spring flowers, fairies, butterflies, and rabbits and eggs. Ha! So rabbits and eggs are both age-old symbols of fertility for obvious reasons. I mean, rabbits are notorious for their prolific procreation abilities, and eggs are just encased fertility, right? In fact, speaking of eggs, why they really are very special comes from way beyond any organized religion, going way back to shamanic times, going back to our earliest ancestors who were hunter-gatherers. This is before the emergence of agriculture and all, and so these hunting-gathering small tribes had a hard time making it through winters when food was very scarce. And when spring arrived and birds began laying eggs all over the place, it was bonanza time. Bonanza time. Because here was an easily retrieved, easily opened, and conveniently portable little case filled with delicious protein. Yowza. It's time to celebrate. We made it through another winter. We're alive. And eggs became very, very important about that. So rabbits and eggs became the adorable little bunny rabbit that we see who hops around carrying baskets of brightly colored eggs. And the brightly colored stuff is also kind of interesting. One more little factoid to add to your store of knowledge. The tradition of decorating eggs actually started in the 13th century. In Europe, the 1200s were notoriously very, 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 very Christian. Okay? And that meant that the time of Lent, after Christmas and before Jesus is killed, and is a time of fasting and penitence, and people really were expected to give up stuff. Well, eggs or on the list of forbidden items to eat during Lent. Okay? So that after Lent ended and people could eat them again, they started decorating them in celebration to make it really special. They had to go about these for a long time, and it makes sense. You know, food presentation is very important. So I couldn't help it. I just wanted to know what eggs and rabbits had to do with all of this. So you got the benefit of that. But let's get back to the title of my talk, which is Rise Up. And I chose that title because here in our Western, mostly Christian culture, the statement, "He is risen," is an appropriate Easter greeting. And you see it on cards, and I've heard people say it to each other. But I would like you to take a look at that and think about this. Easter isn't about celebrating a one-time miracle, as if it only happened in the body of Jesus of Nazareth, and we're all here to celebrate him. That's not what's happening. So to understand this, I went back to my favorite mystic, Meister Eckhart. And in so quoting him, I'm going to bring in another Christian tradition, which is Christmas, but I think you'll see why in just a minute if you'll bear with me. Meister Eckhart wrote this: "What good is it to me if this eternal birth of the divine Son does not take place within myself? And what good is it to me if Mary is full of grace and I am not also full of grace? What good is it to me for the Creator to give birth to his Son if I do not also give birth to him in my time and my culture?" Let's take Meister Eckhart's words to heart and think about them in terms of Easter. What good is it to me if Jesus rose from the dead, if I do not also rise into new life, which is everywhere and everywhen around me? Every person in this room and those of you watching, we've all gone through these little deaths from time to time. A painful experience, a breakup, a death, a real death, something hard. And we've emerged on the other side. We be Easter every day. And that Easter's message is all about that, dying to the old and rising and being transformed and renewed. So spring, yeah. Spring is the time to renew, re-emerge, refresh, re-energize. And notice that first syllable in front of each of those words, re. It means again and again. Because life is a cyclical process. Birth, life, death, resurrection. Birth, life, death, resurrection. Rinse and repeat. Fall, winter, spring, summer. Fall, winter, spring, summer. Forms come and go. But life, life, it just keeps re-ing. Last week, I took a long walk in some quiet neighborhoods on that day when it was so sunny and cool, no more rain, it was beautiful. And in walking through the quiet neighborhoods, trees and plants were going crazy, blossoming with flowers and new leaves and new growth everywhere. Birds were singing. The sun was warm on my face, and the air smelled green. Wow. I had started the walk in a bit of a grumpy mood for various reasons. But as the blocks unrolled beneath my feet, I found myself grinning and breathing deeply and stopping to look at a particular flower or stop and listen to some bird. And I found myself walking by waving my arms and turning my face up. I had been transformed, truly. I took in the beauty of the new life all around me and felt it in me. I gave birth to joy and a sense of peace, and I put to death that grumpy old mood of darkness and completely walked away from it. And I had been challenged with back pain recently, significant. But that day, the longer I walked, the looser my muscles became and the easier it was. I felt completely whole. My body felt in alignment with my state of mind and my emotional well-being in that moment, which was joy, celebration, vitality. Yeah, so that's body and mind. But what about spirit? Because I said body, mind, and spirit, right? Hold me to that. Let's go back to Meister Eckhart again. If I am one with God, a unique expression of the divine, that I am the place where spirit enacts and reenacts itself, the eternal I am. I am a vortex energy of infinite new possibility. And I'm the recipient of ancestry. Ancestors that go back not just 100 years. I mean, I love to watch Finding Your Roots. It's a great show. They can rarely get back to past the 8th grandparent, great. And yet, each one of us here is here because there have been thousands and thousands and thousands of years of hunter-gatherers, early farmers, shamans, people who believe in spring and celebrated spring. Our ancestry, our heritage is rich. It's long, it's primal, and we are deeply rooted in it whether we know it or not. So while I am here representing the possibility of infinite newness, I am also deeply rooted in myths that span the universe, right? In universal archetypes, global metaphors that seek presence in the world to carry a message. We are all of that. My feet may leave footprints in the earth, while my consciousness vibrates outwards to weave connections to everything and everyone around me. I stand, I reach up, and spirit spirals through and as me to unite all the worlds, all the levels of being. God is, I am. God is, I am. God is, you are. Right? He is risen, I am risen. Right? And if I be lifted up, I raise all peoples with me, because we are one. So with every spiritual practice, with every prayer, with every little act of loving kindness or the blessing that delights my heart and nourishes my soul, I die to the world, and I emerge to an inner life that is so much more than the world can ever offer. Our lives are a constant practice in being Easter gods and goddesses. We fall down, we get up. We fall down, we get up. We fall down again, we get up. We crawl into our caves to get away from the noise and the muchness and the clamor of the world. Right? And in the darkness, we spend time listening to the silence. And in there we begin to find glimmers of wisdom that emerge from our own depths. So that in time we get up, we roll away the stone, we step outside, and we leave the cave of old beliefs and old regrets to enter a world refreshed, renewed, and vibrating with a new vision for who we are and how we choose to be in this world. We shed off those old beliefs and we stop up those old voices that want to hold us back and tell us we're not enough. Now, in the past, I think I've told you here that I was raised Catholic. Very, very, very Catholic. Sorry about that. Oh, the nuns would have a field day with me. Okay. But in that faith, there was a wonderfully powerful sentence that was used as part of a prayer that I'd like to share with you. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. Some of you might recognize that. And it was powerful at the time, and I loved it. And over time, as I have become more embedded in New Thought, Ancient Wisdom, I'm going to take that sentence and going to say it again from this New Thought perspective. For God so loves the world that it gives all of itself to every bit of it all the time. Yes. Thank you. Because that's the point. That's the whole thing, right? If this be true, and I'm very convinced that it is, how can I not rise up again and again and again? There is within me the ultimate power to overcome any limiting idea. I am that vortex of energy with infinite possibility. Now, this doesn't mean I don't feel negative emotions. Of course I do. I mean, I told you, I started that walk in a grumpy mood. To think that the world's experiences don't affect me in ways that are less than happy sometimes would be foolish. We're human. Even Jesus, who arose on that third day, Yeshua, when he was praying in the Garden of Gethsemane, he knew the Roman soldiers were coming for him. And I found this so beautifully sad and so perfect because he was feeling crushed and in despair because bad time. And he prayed to his Father to, quote, "Let this cup pass away from my lips." In other words, please, God, no. It's too hard. I can't do it. I have prayed like that. I bet you every one of us has at one time or another. And yet here we are. As I said, we've all died those little deaths, and we've emerged on the other side, scarred and weary perhaps, but transformed and stronger for the experience. I think our scars are beautiful testaments to our ability to transcend, to overcome, and to transform. Scars. We are living this human life of matter. We have these physical bodies, right? And life, as we move through it, has those kinds of effects on the physical matter that is carrying us around. So, in some ways then, and our human selves, the only way to know or be known is when we show how life has marked us. Right? When Jesus appeared to his disciples after he'd risen, and they were all hiding in a room. They were scared because he'd been crucified by the Romans, and they were going to come for them next, they thought. So they're locked in a room when Jesus appears among them. And what he did was he invited them to look upon his wounds, because they were astonished and astounded and fearful. So he invited them to look upon his wounds. He even invited the apostle Thomas to put his hand in Jesus' side where the spear had pierced him, so that it was real, all right? He did not try to hide his wounds. He bared them without shame, and in so doing, he convinced the disciples that he was really there, the real thing, all of him, the real Yeshua, the authentic Yeshua who cursed and withered a fig tree once because it was angry because it didn't give him any figs when he was hungry. The same Yeshua who overturned the tables of the money changers in the temple in rage and fury. The same Yeshua who had his disciples row him out into the middle of the Sea of Galilee, because he was tired of being hounded by the Israelite paparazzi and miracle seekers. He was fed up. He needed a break. He died many deaths and arose all the time. So maybe I be as brave and unashamed of who I am, scars and wounds and warts and all. May I leave my tomb of limiting beliefs and heavy regrets with an unbearable lightness of being. And may I be that new life that Easter celebrates around the world. And that is my wish for you today as well. Namaste. So let's